In today's video, we are going to see how we can create public and protected routes in our React web app using the newest React Router DOM version 6. So without any further ado, let's quickly jump into the code. So in order to get started, I have created a very simple application using Create React App, which shows this simple text for now. Now the next step is obviously to install the React Router DOM package in our application. For that, I'm going to use this integrated terminal provided by the VS Code, and here I'm going to type npm i React Router DOM at latest. Now this will make sure that we only install the latest package of the React Router DOM, that is the version 6. Now that the package has been installed, in order to use this, we need to wrap our application using this browser router component from this library. Now for that, I'm going to use the index.js file because this is the root level of our application, and here I'm going to import browser router from React Router DOM and then simply wrap our app component using this browser router. Now this is going to enable all those routing features in our app.js and technically all the child component which we are going to add further. Now in order to have a concept of public and private route in our application, we must have an authentication system incorporated. So for that, I'm simply going to use a boolean state which is going to store the true or the false value for our current user in the whole application. So for that, I'm simply going to use the use state hook and create a user state, and we'll also have a set user function which will be equals to use state. And initially I want the value of this user state to be null. So in our application, we are going to have 3 pages. One will be an auth page that will be shown to an unauthenticated user, and 2 other pages, the dashboard and the profile, will be rendered only for the authenticated users. For that, in the src folder, I'm going to create a separate folder and name it pages. And inside that, we are going to have 3 JavaScript files. First one is profile.js, the next will be dashboard.js, and the last and the final one will be auth.js, where we are going to perform our authentication. So in here, we are going to have a simple text and a button in order to authenticate our users like this. Now in our component, we are also going to receive an authenticate function as a prop, which we are going to use to set our user state here to true or false. Now in order to use this authenticate function, I'm going to simply create a onClick handler, which will be a simple function, and here I'm simply going to call this authenticate function like this, and also we are going to navigate our user to the profile page. Now for this, in React Router DOM version 4 or below that, we used to have a use history hook which was used to change the current URL of the browser, but now instead of that we have a use navigate hook. So I'll import use navigate from React Router DOM, and here I'm going to say const navigate is equals to use navigate like this, and after the authenticate function is called, we are simply going to use this navigate function, and in this navigate function we are going to pass the path to which we want to redirect our user. So here we want to redirect our user to the profile page. Now let us also not forget to use this onClick handler in our button. For that, I'll simply say onClick is equals to onClick like this. Now we are almost done with our authentication logic in our auth.js file. The next thing which we are going to do is construct our profile page. Now in the profile component, we are going to have a link in order to navigate our user to the dashboard. For that, I'm going to use this link component from the React Router DOM package, and here we need to pass a toProp which will be our path to the dashboard component or the dashboard page. Now after this, we are going to have a text and a button in order to log out our user, and this profile page is again going to get a function called logout as it props, and we are simply going to bind this with our button click right here. So I'm going to say on click, and this will be equals to our logout function. Now let us quickly go to our dashboard page, and this is also going to be a simple dashboard with only a simple text showing dashboard as an h1 text. So now that we have done creating all our pages that we require, now this is time to use the routes in order to switch between different pages using the link and also using the URL. For that, I'm simply going to this app.js, and I'm going to import routes from React Router DOM. So I'm going to say routes like this, and if you may notice that in React Router DOM version 4 or below, we used to have a switch component instead of this routes, but now in the newer versions we have this routes component, which is technically more efficient and has a better algorithm in order to match our path and render pages accordingly. So inside this routes component, we are going to have individual route For that, I'm going to simply import route from React.DOM. Then here we need to set the path. So for the authentication, I'm going to say /auth. And here, instead of having a component prop in the below versions or the lower versions, we have an element prop, and this as we need to pass the page or the component which we want to render for this particular path. And in here, we need to pass our auth component like this. So always remember, we are passing the whole component as in JSX, not just the pointer which we used to do in version 4 or below. Now, as discussed, our auth component or the auth page expects an authenticate function. So I'm going to pass this authenticate function, and this will be a simple function which will set our user to true like this. Now, simply like this, we are also going to have two other routes. So I'm simply going to paste this. We have a profile route and also a dashboard route. Now in here, we are going to use the profile, and here we are going to use the dashboard page. Now this profile page obviously expects a logout function, so I'm going to say log out, and here instead of setting the user to true, we are simply going to set the user to false. And in our dashboard we do not pass any props, so I'll simply remove it. And now we can see that we have created a bare bone structure of how our routes are going to render our pages accordingly. So now if I go ahead and change this to dashboard, this is going to show us dashboard, or if we go ahead and profile, this is going to show profile. So for now we are seeing that we are able to navigate to any of these routes even after that we are not authenticated. So in order to incorporate the protected route, we need to have a simple logic here. So I'm going to say we're going to render this route only if the user is not authenticated. So I'm going to say if not user or user is false, and then only we are going to render this particular route. And similarly for these two routes, we're going to render them only if the user is present. So only if the user state is true, we are going to have a fragment, and in here we're going to paste these two routes. So if we save this and reload our page, we can see that we are still in this profile page, but a simple flow should be like if we are unauthenticated, then we should be redirected to any 404 page or maybe the auth page so that we can sign in and continue. So for that we are going to create a different route or a fallback route which is going to catch any of the path which is not matched. So if any of the path is not matched, so in our case as you can see this profile is not matched because it will be rendered only if the user is authenticated. So if nothing matches, we are going to fall back into this route like this. So I'm going to say star like this, and here instead of rendering any particular element, we are going to use this navigate component from React.DOM, and in here we are going to have a to prop which again we are going to use conditionally. So if the user is present, we are going to have a path of profile, or if the user is not present, we are going to redirect our user to /auth. So now if I reload this page and if I try to manually navigate to dashboard, we can see that we are automatically redirected back to this auth page. Now if we authenticate, we can see that we can navigate to profile and also the dashboard. Now if I go back, log out, and this is the simple flow which we wanted. But now we are not using this user, or we are not persisting this user. So even if we authenticate and reload this page, we can see this auth page again, because every time this app reloads, our user state is null. So what we can do is we can persist this user state in the local storage, and when we mount our app or when we load our app for the first time, we can fetch that user and then set our state accordingly. So for that, I'm simply going to use the use effect hook. Now every time this user state changes, I'm going to simply store that value to the local storage. So in the use effect, we're going to say local storage dot set item, and as a key I'm going to pass the user and the value will be user state. Now I want that every time the user changes, we need to perform this activity. So I'm going to pass the user state as the dependency to this use effect hook. Also, we need to load this saved value from the local storage when the app mounts. So for that, I'll be having a separate use effect with no dependency. So here we'll be having a simple function, and here we are going to fetch that item from our local storage. So I'm going to say const u is equals to local storage dot get item, and then we are going to pass our key, which is user. So if this variable exists, so we're going to say u, and then we are going to pass the value which we are getting from the local storage. So I'm going to say json.parse, and we're going to pass this u variable right here. Now if this passed value is true, we're going to set the user to true, and if not, we're going to set the user to false. Now also, as discussed, we'll be passing an empty array because we don't want any dependency, and this piece of code will work only once when the app mounts. Now if we save this, reload our web page and click on this authenticate button, we are redirected to this profile page. Now, even if we try to reload it manually, we stay in the same page as we are persisting our user state in our local storage. Now, if I manually try to go to the auth page, it won't allow me because we have created this logic right here. Now we can see that we can navigate to dashboard and everything is working as expected. So that was pretty much how you use React Router DOM version 6 in order to create public and protected route in your React web app. So this was Prashun, you are watching Full Stack Simplified, and if you really enjoyed this content, then a sub to this channel will be outstanding.